It really looks like the ANC has two choices to make. Number one, be more retarded with MK and EFF, or number two, have a government of national unity.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, you may be listening to this and thinking to yourself, government and national unity, what does that actually mean? It basically means all the political parties get together, form a big club, and agree to work together. For the purposes of national unity. And to, improve the mess the ANC's caused. Now, you may be thinking, that would never happen. But we are seeing more and more press announcements by political leaders, specifically when they're referencing their manifestos, referencing the possibility of a government of national unity. Would you know, Ramon? Brent Hurst's survey this weekend found that the ANC's prospects of getting a majority are pretty low. In fact, their actual voting statistics now are down to like 39%, which is actually very low. And it does look like the ANC and the EFF are likely to flop at the next elections.
As we predicted, so I was expecting ANC 50% to 45%, and then having small parties, pop it up until 50%. But then MK came along and he's absolutely bulldozing everyone and everything. Based on this survey, take that with a pinch of salt, of course, 25 to 30% in KZN, MK by itself, nationally close to 13%. As a political party. I mean, this is the greatest comeback in political history if those numbers are accurate. I have reason to believe they are accurate in some ways, but of course, we won't know until the elections finally happen. But if MK get 13%, if the EFF get 10%, that's 23% of the voting bloc that is completely communist and deranged and retarded. ANC is part of that voting bloc. The ANC chooses to go with them. That's their prerogative. We become Argentina. If the ANC thinks to itself, we can't let these people win, we need a government of national unity based on the principles not ascribed to by the retarded segment of the population, then the ANC has a shot at sort of redeeming itself. Those are the two choices, Byron. Unfortunately, which one do you think they'll pick?
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are reminded of Morning Shot's razor. And Morning Shot razor states, the most retarded outcome is the most likely. So what did you say was the most retarded outcome, Ramon? Because it's probably that one.
So based on the Morning Shot razor, the ANC will go with the MK and EFF to create a government of national socialism. And then, we become Argentina 2.0, mixed in with a bit of sort of Zimbabwe along with it. But somehow, there's my gut reaction is, if the ANC gets 40% and needs, a lot of parties to get to 50%, it makes far more sense to have ethno-nationalists along for the ride. It makes far more sense to have the IFP along. It makes far more sense to have the Free Front Plus along. It makes far more sense to have the DA along. Because these are parties that can actually do shit properly. Much more than the ANC can. And if you look at the market forces, like the railways and Eskom, all those things are being sorted out by the private sector. All the old guard of the ANC are falling out. Praveen's gone, Lady Pando's gone, Dlamini Zuma's gone. So who's left? Like Fix Fokol, who has no chance at all of doing anything correctly. So there's something in me that says the ANC could be quite pragmatic about this post this particular election. But what are your thoughts, though?
Thoughts on this are it really depends who's left post the elections, as you very rightly say. Many of the individuals within the ANC that are retiring are the old guard, but it is arguable that they are also possibly the more pragmatic in some respects. In other respects, they're also the most communist diehards, like Praveen Gordhan. The difficulty is we don't know who's actually going to be left, Ramon, after the election. We don't even know if Cyril's going to be left, because Cyril may, and we have called this many, many times, Cyril may say that because of the electoral defeat, I want to re-highlight for the 50 millionth time that ANC highlights that they consider an electoral defeat as getting below 50%. They could even still be in power. They still consider that an electoral defeat is anything below a majority. And right now, the ANC are going to have an electoral defeat. In other words, they are not going to get a majority on their own. They may cobble together a coalition of sorts. But the reality, Ramon, is we don't even know if Cyril will stay. He may say, well, I led you to defeat. I'm resigning. We don't even know if Paul Mashatile will be the second in command, because there's things to oust him. We don't know who's left. which makes it very difficult to determine, Ramon, which approach they're going to take, because we don't know which retards are going to be at the helm after the elections.
Well, I'll just look at what the retards at the helm are saying about MK and the EFF. If you speak to Ifikile Mbalula, like he's, talking cuck about Jacob Zuma every second day, him and Julius Malema don't get along at all whatsoever. And Ifikile is the strong man in the ANC. If he is, of course, the Secretary General, who could become the leader in time to come if Paul Mashatile is shuffled away. I mean, will Fikile be in power along with Jacob Zuma, who he sees as a real big senior authority father figure? I have my sincere doubts. I think he'd rather take his chances with John Steenhuisen and the IFP and the Freedom Front Plus than with MK and EFF. There's just something in me that says the retardation of the ANC is at a point where the weak leadership is actually undermining the retardation aspect. They're sort of understanding that they need real leadership, which will dampen the retardation of the ANC, and that real leadership will be a government of national unity with, Freedom Front, IFPDA, for example. And then you ice out MK, you ice out the EFF, and then, you could have 3% growth within 2 years. Eskom's being sorted by the private sector, so is Transnet, so is a lot of the problems we are facing. Like, tell you who. Like, I don't see a downside for the ANC.
There's always the Karen in the Western Cape who will be in our comment section saying,
it's going to be an EFF, and it's going to be an MK and ANC thing, and they're just going to loot this country and drive the white people into the ocean.
As well as I do, Ramon, Karen's going to be in the comments. And I suppose the one thing I would highlight, Ramon, is that there are individuals now in the ANC that, quite frankly, are just sick of the EFF, because they've had to work with them in coalitions for some time. And every time something goes wrong, the EFF goes, it's ANC's fault, it's not us. Even where it's their portfolio, they're still blaming the ANC. And a lot of the indications are that the ANC is basically sick of it. So there may be a section of the ANC that's not that keen to go into a national coalition. I mean, it's one thing to do it at a metro level. A national coalition is a hell of a lot harder. But that being said, Ramon, it's also very difficult to determine, because obviously we know that if they do go into some form of coalition on a national level, it's probably not going to be a formal one. It's probably going to be an informal coalition where they basically kind of like divide the fiscus in the way that they have done many municipalities. But let's just assume that if they do that, the question still remains, who's the king? Because if you recall, in all the metros, they always stick a minnow party member as the king, the puppet king, like your province, Ramon, Gangster's Paradise. So, they got like a puppet king. And the problem there is that the puppet king usually falls over. When it comes through to the elections for the national government, the president's a lot different from just being a metro mayor, right? So who's going to be king? And that's really where the coalitions start to fall apart.
Absolutely. So for now, we must just sort of wait and see. But MK is completely destroying any projections on coalitions. We were certain it was going to be ANC and DA, but now with MK into the fall, it needs to be ANC, DA, Freedom Front Plus, and the IFP to have a government of national unity. And we think that could possibly be the best outcome for this country going forward.
I think that actually, if you think about it, though, Ramon, if you actually have a government of national unity that has the DA, the IFP, the Freedom Front Plus, ACGP, whoever else, basically the multi-party with the ANC. The reason that makes sense, Ramon, is because what you can't do from a DA perspective is say, DA, you betrayed your voters. Because look, you sided with the devil. Because it's government of national unity. So it actually is more likely to hold together. The biggest, when we've seen it even where people are told that there's a possibility of a DA-ANC coalition, a lot of people say, well, that would be the death of the DA. Government of national unity would not do the death of the DA. The only drawback of government of national unity is that it would pit the ANC's role in the national government. It would basically render them to like a junior partner. So the ANC couldn't basically just do its own thing anymore, which means what's the likelihood of actually the ANC accepting that outcome? For me, very low. But I think for you, you have a different opinion.
Yeah, imagine if there's 4 more adults in the room rather than just John Steenhuisen. We can actually dream. Let us know in the comments what you think. See you tomorrow. Cheers.